Gentlemen, are you tired of hearing things like, go get him, champ, rise and grind, oh, I gotta go and hit the pavement, I gotta hustle, hustle, hustle? Well, what do you do when your hustle isn't working? What do you do when you're grinding your gears and yet you feel miserable and exhausted? We're gonna talk about all of that and more coming up in The Sharp Gentleman. This is The Sharp Gentleman Podcast, a show that explores style, love, and what it means to be a modern gent. Discover what it takes to build better relationships, tackle your goals, and challenge your expectations of what's possible. From insights and advice to stories and powerful questions, you'll get everything you need to take your confidence to the next level and become the man you were born to be. I'm Blake Hammerton. Welcome to The Sharp Gentleman. Now look, rise and grind is something we're all used to hearing and seeing and believing these days. And in order to get what you want in life, in order for you to really get ahead, you have to get up early and grind yourself, your gears, and your ambition against the motion of the day. Well, I mean, technically, it's the idea that you should attack the day as soon as you wake up and stay focused as you get into the groove of the daily grind of work and responsibilities. I understand what rise and grind means. Essentially, you have to hustle if you want to make things happen. Now, sometimes the hustle can bring great success and confidence. And other times, the hustle brings exhaustion and despair and defeat. So what's the catch with hustle? In this episode of the podcast, we're exploring the tale of two entrepreneurs and the differences between a hustle that works and a hustle that hurts. No, it may not cause physical harm, I get that. But a hustle that doesn't work is every bit as exhausting and fruitless as trying to ride a bicycle through wet cement. So let's fix that and get you on your way. Now, one of the main reasons people venture out on their own and leave the comfort zone of the cubicle-lined nest of corporate America is the burning desire to be your own boss. Unfortunately, too few realize that being the boss means doing the work of the boss and the managers and the crew and the salespeople and the marketing team well, you get the idea. When a client of mine, and I have to say this, who gave me permission to share his story provided I changed his name, so we'll call him Evan. When a client of mine, Evan, saw the bright light of entrepreneurial fame and fortune and whatever else goes with it, he saw that come on at the end of a very dark desk job tunnel, he leapt into action. Now, Evan was working as a middle management in middle America and just doing middle-of-the-road things. He was a project manager for a property management conglomerate. And he had a corner cubicle with windows and plenty of space. It was truly the best corner office he was ever gonna get. Now, he ran reports for the properties in the region and what his sales team was doing and his development team, and he coordinated the projects in business casual from his corner cubicle in Louisville, Kentucky. Life was pretty sweet. He and his wife were about to celebrate their second anniversary, and she had just announced her pregnancy. Things were progressing along quite nicely, right? Sounds like the American dream. Well, he went out with a few friends for a day of golf, and he ran into a former coworker who had ventured out on his own. Now, Mark, we'll call him Mark, the former coworker, left their company to pursue his own passions in the business world and was having a great time at being independently successful. A week later, Mark called to get everyone together for another round on his dime, but Evan had to decline because he had too many projects at work. He felt the draw to start his own company right from that moment. Why do I have to be stuck here when Mark and his team are out having fun? Why do I have to deal with all these other contracts that aren't mine? Why do I have to take home only a certain amount of money while my company and my boss and my superiors make more and have more freedom and do more great things? Now, the feelings only grew from there. Every time Mark could do whatever he wanted without answering to a boss, Evan grew more disillusioned with his career path. Now, eventually, Evan could take no more and launched his own company. He knew enough to be dangerous in property management, so he left his job and started his own property management firm. He was waking up and hustling as hard as he could. He was calling properties and owners and managers for bids to manage those new contracts, to take over properties, to build his clientele. He was visiting businesses. He was shaking hands and kissing babies. It was almost like running for office. He was just getting out there. He was sending hundreds of emails every week. He landed a few small projects pretty quickly with this approach, and he felt like he was on top of the world. Things looked good. He was controlling the entire situation, and it was working. Sure, he was working from 6 a.m. to midnight 7 days a week, but he was his own boss. Evan lived the, quote, rise and grind mantra every single day. He couldn't go to social gatherings because he was hustling. He couldn't celebrate moments and occasions with his wife because he was hustling. He was growing his business and his clientele because his hustle was effective. He was busy. He was important. He was also disconnected from his wife. He was distant. He was exhausted. He was miserable. Now, Evan was motivated by not falling on his face. His fear of not having enough, of leaving his corporate job to take over and be his own boss, while also about to have a baby, while also trying to figure out how to make ends meet. His fear of not having enough had him chasing opportunities around every corner. He wanted freedom to choose in his life, but his choices kept him further from it. He traded one role for 10 more. He pursued wealth and business success, but had no desire for the work he was actually doing. His business hustle was effective, but his hustle hurt. Now, on the flip side, one of my favorite stories is that of Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia. They were both designers looking to make ends meet in San Francisco, and at the very least, get some help paying the rent on their apartment. And if you know anything about San Francisco, you know that you get about 200 square feet, and it's $2,500 a month. I wish I was kidding. It's incredibly expensive. Now, they had a little extra space and they liked people, so they put their extra loft space up for temporary rent for, let's say, the weekend or a day or two at a time. The biggest thing they knew they could offer was cheap accommodations, a bed basically, and a home-cooked breakfast with a smile. You essentially got an air bed and breakfast. When it turned out to be a hit, they discovered other people looking to bring a service like theirs to their cities. That's when the real hustle began. Being designers and living in San Francisco, they took liberties with cereal boxes and designed a new box for each of the presidential candidates and launched them at the Democratic National Convention later that year. And so this is back in 2008 when we had Obama O's and Captain McCain Crunch, respectively. So there's images in the show notes, you can see what these things look like. Selling each of these as promotional presidential memorabilia allowed them to raise $30,000 and take their concept to phase 2. After that, they started pitching other investors to help them build a searchable website for different locations across the country, to create standard operating procedures, to bring their business plan into the forefront of their ideas so that other investors and banks and other people could see, hey, this is a real good idea, and we're actually doing things to make this happen. Now, after pitching investors, continuing to hustle for more funds to build their service, and putting in the long hours, they were exhausted. But they were not interested in stopping because they were not burned out. Fast forward a few years and they're still hustling. They fly with their teams now to cities all over the world to help others follow their brand standards. They've launched new initiatives to train the public on how to successfully use their service, and they don't need funding anymore. Because they believe their service and idea was simple, attractive, and fulfilled a need in both themselves and their customers, which is help people travel and stay places with a personal touch at a better price. Their hustle helped. Their airbed and breakfast, now known as Airbnb, is now in cities all over the world and valued at $31 billion. So what's the point? Well, there are a few things that have as large an influence on your prosperity as your attitude about what you do, and more importantly, why you're doing it. Anyone can get rich in America, but far too few are getting rich doing what they love. They may earn a lot of money, but they're working for the weekend, for a chance to escape the drone of what they're doing throughout the week and live the free life of Saturday and Sunday. The hustle has no schedule. It has no concept of weekends. It knows no start and no finish. You, my friend, have to set the boundaries and the reasons for using it. So when I was working on purchasing Jamie's engagement ring, I was hustling while she was off at work doing things I didn't want to do. So I was working on cars and driveways for months in secret. I was doing light electrical work around town. I was helping people with ceiling fans and lighting fixtures and just general light handyman stuff. I was hustling to raise the money off the books. And I was working as often as I possibly could because I had a goal, and I was exhausted. But I had a reason for it. Now, hustle has no emotional attachment to what you do or what you're trying to accomplish. So think of it like gasoline. It doesn't care if you're using it to run a generator to power a house after a devastating natural disaster. See, that sounds good, right? Gasoline can be something that can help you out of a hole. Or you can use gasoline as an accelerant to burn a house down. It doesn't care, it's just gasoline. That's what hustle is. You can hustle without burning out and without compromising your integrity. But you can just as easily hustle and grind yourself into overworked unhappiness. So if your hustle isn't working to bring you what you truly want, I invite you to pause and take a look at what you're using it for. You might be trying to accomplish tasks and goals for something you don't truly want, so you're subconsciously hoping it doesn't work so you can escape. Now, think about that for a second. Have you ever been in a relationship or a job or a situation where your success depends on how hard you work and you're not actually working too hard because deep down you hate what you're doing or hate who you're with or hate whatever you're involved with because you just kind of want it to go away? So subconsciously you start sabotaging your success because you want out. You might be looking for all these things that you're working on to fail so that you can be right and say, I told you so. And maybe that's to just yourself or someone else. You might need to hear, see, I told you so. You should never have done that. Just for yourself. You might also be struggling because you're stubborn and don't know what you're doing, but refuse to stop and ask for directions. Seriously, stop. Ask for help. Ask for guidance. Ask for clarity. There are other people who are successful at what you're trying to do in most avenues. So stop for a moment, find a mentor, find an example of someone who's had success in what you're trying to accomplish, and ask them what's going on. What do you do? Where do you go from here? If your hustle isn't working, it's usually because you're not truly interested in the goal you're pursuing, or you have no idea what you're doing and refuse to ask for help. Make reflecting and adjusting course. Those are the two things, reflecting and adjusting course. Make them part of your hustle and you'll get there, I promise. And if you realize the goal you're working toward isn't really what you want, dude, you have my permission. You have all the permission you need, yourself, myself, anyone you can come in contact with and tell them, hey, I'm doing stuff I don't really want to do. Should I quit? We all tell you, yes, you have permission. Quit. Set it down. Walk away. Sometimes the best hustle isn't the one that makes you rich. It's the one that helps you see that what you're doing is making you poor. Financially, emotionally, relationally, or spiritually. So get clear and go forth. The best way to make sure your hustle is working for you is to know what you're using your hustle to work for. What are you working toward? So the big premise here is we hear these things like you need to hustle harder, you need to hustle smarter, you need to, really grind and work and hit the pavement every day. Just go and do your thing and just be out there, be everywhere, be on it all the time. Never turn it off. And that's great. And then at the same time, they tell you, if you find something you love, if you're working inside your passion, you'll never work a day in your life. Well, we need to combine those two things and realize the only way that hustle really works is when you're doing it for something you truly love. Or you're doing it in something you don't really love, but it will get you to what you love. So when I was trying to buy that ring, I was doing things I didn't want to do, and I was working really hard because I knew it was temporary and it would get me to the ring that I wanted. So I hope this podcast finds you well. I hope this episode resonates with you and you look at some of the things that you're doing. And if you're feeling like you're burning out, this is okay. Take a few moments to pause and reflect on what you're working for, like what you're working towards, what the big goals are. And if you find that you're just working for some arbitrary goal that's not getting you toward a better part of your life, a better spot in your life, or a better chapter, whether that's closing a chapter you're working on now or starting a chapter later, it's okay to sit there and go, man, what the hell am I doing? And then figure out what you want to do instead. I'm not saying you quit your job, but I'm saying look at what it's going to get you. Look at what you're actually working on. And if you don't like who you are, what you're doing, or where you're going, you have the power to change it. Take some deep breaths and remember, hustle doesn't care whether you're doing it for the right or the wrong reasons. If you apply it, it will get you someplace. And it might be a good place or it might be a bad. It doesn't care. So what do you do when your hustle isn't working? Figure out what you're working for. Figure out what motivates you, what your big goals are, and what you're actually doing. So get clear on that. And shoot me an email if you have any questions. I can help you get some clarity and figure out what you're trying to do. And if you're actually finding inspiration, motivation, and fulfillment working toward the things you think you want. We'll uncover some stuff, we'll deep dive, we'll unravel, it'll get crazy, and you'll learn something. So you can always just send a comment on the show notes or shoot me an email anytime, and we'll get there. But take some deep breaths, make some cool things happen, and hustle for it, because you know you can. And until next time, stay brilliant.